Alrighty, so on the MiG with landing gear, you see there's that little shaded place where the nose wheel is supposed to go. It's something I think I was supposed to put in while I was building the stupid thing. So I had to do a little surgery. But these are what the wheels landing gear looks like. You bend wire to those shapes, and they're just L's. The nose gear, which is what we're going to show right now, all I did with that was just bend it. And then I wrapped the Oleo strut around it, which I'll show you how I do that later. I made the little interior piece, which I had to modify a little bit because I have to, again, plug this in after. And then that balsa wood, the wire on the Oleo is up in there and glued in there, so it's something very solid that it sits in. And it's going to fit in just like that. And again, I didn't go to the problem of putting an axle in there. But there's the piece I had to open up. So opening it was easy, except I had to, you see the little, right there, the little cuts on either side? That's because I had to kind of open it up a little more in order to stick this whole nose gear piece in. So, yeah, on that side too. And that opens it up enough so I can actually stick the gear in. And I had to shorten, like I said, the box that had the gear in it because of where my bulkhead is in there and stuff. But overall, it's still going to look okay as long as it'll glue in there and dry in there, which it should. So it's just going to fit right in there after I put some glue on it. And I'm just putting it all the way down. And it shoves in there. And there's the bulkheads both touch it, so it's going to be relatively strong. And I'm just putting it flush. And again, had I done it correctly, it would have been much neater. But this is going to work just fine. Putting it in afterwards is not ideal. But anyway, I'm just making sure it looks good, making sure it's straight. And there it is. And once it dries, I got a nice nose wheel. And I'm just going to, I didn't, like I said, put an axle on it. That's just going to stick straight into a balsa wheel, nose wheel when I make it. But you can see it looks like it's got an interior, and I can paint up the inside of the doors. That's not bad considering I did it all wrong. So here is the landing gear for the main gear, and you can see it's just an L with paper wrapped around it, and those are the paper pieces that wrap around. And I'm really pleased because I figured out a good way to actually make that work. That wraps around the base of the wire that's on the inside. I'm never able to do that. There's my wire, just cut. I make it a little longer so it has a plug on the end, but that's going to be, I made two of those, one for one side, one for the other. So that's going to work, assuming I can do that. Now, as far as the little Nieuport's concerned, here I am making the struts for the front, and that is a little dabbing tool, and I get a great shot of my knuckles. What I'm doing is that little tool was the perfect size to wrap around the brass, to wrap around it, and I got a pretty perfect shape down at the base. Then with a little tweaking, got it to be the right size, but it worked really well. Then I grabbed the end, again, behind my knuckles, and that is going to be where it's going to be have a little bend, right, like that. And that is what's going to go up into a hole in the fuselage. And again, the other side is a little taller because that has to be plugged into the fuselage. The pieces are, there's the wire, and then there's a piece down there where the axle will fit in. It's going to be made of paper. That's those pieces I cut out, and I'll show them to you. And then each of those pieces are the strut pieces that go on. There's a forward and a front and back. Then there's the wire that's the actual axle. And there's a piece of paper, that piece that is cut out, that wraps around that. And then there's something else that folds, and I'm not sure exactly how that's going to fit. That's that blue thing right there. So that's that blue thing. I'm not sure where it goes yet. The gray is going to wrap around the metal axle, which is going to be interesting, wrap around there. But I found a way to make it work, and I'll show you. Actually, and then those are the strut pieces that fit on. And actually, I've taken these pictures, and it was going great. And then I thought I was taking pictures of the wrapping of everything, and it turns out I messed up. But we'll get back to that. So with each of the sides, I ended up taking the white glue and smearing it along the strut so that there's a location for the brass interior. And this white glue works very well for this because all you have to do is get it in there and then fold the paper over the strut and sandwich it, and it stays fine. It's going to be great. So there it's kind of grabbing. And then you just take some time to sort of turn it over and sandwich it and make sure basically it lines up. And once you get one part started, you can see I'm trying to get it so that it's kind of centered where it's supposed to be. And then once I squeeze it over one little part, I'm making sure that I know where to locate it because I practice to make sure that like I have a little piece sticking out of that tip up at the top where it's going to go into the fuselage. But I just squeeze it shut. And the brass is skinny enough that you can put the paper around and squeeze it, and it actually closes pretty dang good, pretty well. Then once it's closed and I got it on there, then I kind of press and try to make sure it's all completely formed around the brass. And so there's the front one on. I look at it end on, and you can see there's white there. That'll be painted later. But I'm just squeezing this to make sure that that it's actually closed, which it does. It works just great. Works really well. So then there I am doing the very same thing, adding the glue, dropping the little brass piece in there. I know that the top where it hits the fuselage, that the paper has to be right there at the end. Turn it over, squeeze it shut, making sure everything is straight, making sure the wire is in the interior, kind of in the middle of that, sort of in the middle of the paper fold for it makes the blue strut. And I do the same thing. I kind of run up and down with my finger and put pressure on there, and you end up with nice landing gear for the Nieuport. And so I'm kind of trying to do these together, so this and the MiG, just to show you, they're slightly different ways to do things, but it's kind of fun to do them at the same time. Again, make sure that it's actually closed, and I will, like I say, paint those once I get all on the airplane to touch things up, and it will look hopefully really good. Neil over at Neil's Paper Models, he's good at making sure he gets the right colors and everything like that. Now here I made two little marks, which is where the bottom axle piece goes. I just put that over the plan, marked off where those pieces go, so I know where to actually put this piece. It's if you don't know where to put it, you can kind of mess things up. But I checked it first, and so now I know exactly where to put it down. I put some glue, smush some glue on the inside, and then just lay it over the struts at the base where it's supposed to go. I put a little extra glue down there and on the bottom brass piece just to make sure that I'll get good contact. And then I just drop it on there, accurately where those little lines are that I put in with a pencil, so I know how far it's supposed to go, which is just above those pieces of glue, just like that. So then I squeeze that down, and then I'll end up, I got glue all over it, so I'm going to just basically fold this thing over, and then carefully fold it, and then squeeze it shut. And I can go back and kind of, if there's any glue in the axle hole, I can pull that out and stuff. I can cut off the extra bits with some little nippers, little plier-y things with cutters on them. And there you have a finished strut. And again, the white parts will be painted, so you won't even see any of that. So there's one, and there's the other I made previously. So there's our two landing gear. And what I wanted to do was show then how I made the axle and rolled the paper around the axle. But this is where I thought I was taking a movie, and I wasn't. And so I think the next picture is just, here I start telling you how to do it, but then the next part, which is important, I don't do it. Now this is the piece that was on the paper that I had, and what I tried to do was thin it out by pulling it apart and delaminating it, because it's too thick to turn around that small little diameter. So what I decided to do was just copy it onto some regular old typing paper. So this is very thin typing paper, so if I cut that out, that I should be able to roll around with that thin paper. Good paper modelers, like I say, are able to delaminate the paper if it's too thick and make it work, because the thicker the paper, the harder it's going to be to roll. So what I did was start by, like we always do, put a little curve in there, using that backing, um, and or a nice big rubber eraser works really well. A mouse pad, something in the back so you can push. And then what I did was add little tiny bits of glue along the axle. And all I want to do is get the piece of paper that's going to wrap around, glue it on the very, very, very edge of the axle, just to get it started and let it dry for a while. And then what you have is a piece of wire. You got the paper on there. And then what I did was, there I am just carefully putting on the edge. What I did was I added water to the paper with a little paintbrush, and that made the paper very, very pliable. In fact, since this was just typing paper, almost too pliable. But I was able to very easily roll this around and glue it, and ended up with an axle, that the metal part of the axle, covered with that paper gray piece to make it look good and make it look kind of scale. And it worked really well. I've always had trouble with that. But here I am just making sure it's glued, and then I'm going to just let it dry. And this is the part where, sadly, the next step was showing how I rolled that paper over that tiny little metal axle with the water addition, which isn't my idea. I gleaned that off of a Japanese fellow's paper model site. So anyway, I have to show you just the end result because I didn't get this on film because I'm a moron. There's the spar, or the axle with things wrapped around. There are the landing gear struts just plugged into holes up there. Really easy to do. You don't need to have someone show you. They fit beautifully. They were aligned right. And then once they're on the fuselage there, you just make sure you put the axle in and you're good to go. So now back to the MiG. So that's the landing Oleo strut for the MiG. And there's the piece of metal, there, the Oleo interior. And so this one actually works really well, and I can show you how it works. This is what you couldn't see when I was doing with the Nieuport axle cover. So you start by rolling that piece. And again, this paper is rather thick, and it's got that silvery covering on it, which actually looks pretty good, I think. But anyway, I roll it, and then you roll it with successively finer or smaller diameter things. The only thing I really had there was a piece of aluminum tubing. But I kept doing that till I get a little bit of a curve. And then I took super glue, my thick super glue, because this is such a thick piece of paper, and I added it very, 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 very carefully along the edge. And what I did then was drop the metal bent piano wire, in there where it's supposed to be, where it's supposed to go, right on the very edge. So like you're just starting the roll. If you put that paper right up against the metal Oleo strut interior, then you can supposedly roll all the rest of the paper Oleo strut all the way around, roll it on itself, and then make the correct thickness. Should work in theory. So what I did was go ahead and put this where it's supposed to go, which is right on the edge, so that the L piece down there is just sticking out the bottom. And I got a little piece on top. You can see that's going to be a plug. And I just set that thing down and let it dry. I'm just making sure at this point, very delicately, making sure that it's on the edge of the paper, because you want to be able to roll over. And I just let it sit. Don't touch it. Let it. I had to stick my fingers through my tripod, my hand. That just means give it time. Look at that. I am so skilled. Harry Houdini. So now, this is the cool part. There it is dry, and you can see the piece of little metal on there, or the piano wire. I used a little eraser because I could elevate this above my surface, and because that L is sitting there on the edge, right down there, you have to have it wind up on an area where you got some clearance for that L. But here was the magic. Like this Japanese fella did, I should put a link onto his website. He does amazing stuff. He wetted it down, and I just wetted it with normal water. Then what I did, it still didn't seem too loose to me. I took my X-Acto blade and just ran it very carefully along where the edge of the piano wire is on the paper. I'm not cutting through at all. What I'm trying to do is just give it a place to bite so it'll kind of bend there, and then I can roll all the way around. And here you can see I'm nervous. I'm adding a little more water. This didn't wet like the other paper at all, but at least there's water on there. So the magic is here now. And I'm doing this on camera. It worked for the other side. It's the first time I'm doing it. And you see the L is over there. I'm holding down the middle with my other fingers. And what I start to do is roll. And as I roll, I realized, wait a second, I can use that. See how I'm grabbing, that's like leverage. I'm grabbing that little right angle there. That's the axle. And I'm using that to roll the piece onto the paper. And I keep pressure and it keeps rolling beautifully. It's like in a cartoon where they're opening a can of sardines or something. And then I put a little glue and smear it around so it's a relatively thin layer on all those pieces. And then I roll the rest of the way. And I'm pushing down to make sure that nothing falls out, doesn't unroll. But I just keep rolling just like that. And it worked like a charm. Having that little L over there was just genius. It was an accident, but I realized, gosh, I can use that. And it just rolled right up like a charm. I've never had an Oleo strut look this good. And it was great. And then all you have to do then, it all matched up. It was fantastic. So all I have to do then is make sure it's tight. So I kind of press on it and everything. But what I was pleased by is that usually when I've rolled things like this, the strut ends up oblong. So there's air and space between the paper and the piece of metal, the piano wire inside, because it kind of starts to roll and go oblong and flat and looks dumb. But in my case, doing this, it worked great. So this is just what I did with the axle on the Nieuport. So seeing this is giving you an idea how I did that. Now these very end pieces, I put some super glue on just because I didn't give enough glue on them. Plus, this will make it, lock it in place, hold it over, and that dries nice. Made sure all those pieces were down. And then I put a little super glue on the ends, on both ends, the axle end and also the plug end. Just as a way, a little piece of insurance, just to make sure that it's not going to unroll. It won't, I don't think. It's glued plenty, but just kind of nervous about it. Just making sure. And then I hit that with each side with a little bit of the accelerator just to lock it. And there, your Oleo strut is done. And I know that it's not that exciting to people, but to me it was, because I've never made one that worked before. Always end up with something that looks crummy. And this one, even though you can't see it real well, and it isn't, I always joke about it's not Polish yet, or Slovakian or Czech or Russian or German. At least it's better than I've done before. And they'll just plug right in. You see the one on the right's already in. That just plugs in there. So I grab a little glue, in this case super glue again, and I put a blob right there. Then I put a little bit of the accelerator on the plug end of the Oleo strut, so I can stick that in there and it will dry pretty much instantaneously. There, putting a little drop right there. This is, and I practiced, and I know that how I can make sure that it's actually vertical and it's not leaning anywhere and all this. So I stick it in there. There it goes, and then I just make sure that it's the right. Everything's good. There it is. There's the other side, and then is it going to be a tail sitter? I'm putting this down. I put it down. Oh my goodness. It isn't. I'm so excited. I guess I had enough nose weight in there. So there it is. Looking good. And I'm so pleased. So it's one step closer to being done.